Good evening, and thanks for tuning in to Studio 9, the weekly chat show here on Channel 9. This week, my guests are Councillor Willie O'Connell of the SDLP and Councillor Gerry O'Hara of Sinn Féin. Gentlemen, you're both very welcome. If I can begin tonight's discussion with a topic which has generated a lot of debate over the past few weeks, the airport. Gerry O'Hara, why exactly did Cathal Crumley, who was chairman of the Council's Airport Committee, why did he resign?
Well, he felt that he was doing no good in the position as chair, in that he wasn't being given the information. He wasn't being able to influence events the way that he would like to have done, and he felt that he had to maintain his integrity on the issue by making a public stance on it. Willie
O'Connell, the airport's always been a bit of an SDLP baby, hasn't it?
Are you being
overprotective of something that's costing the ratepayers of the city a fortune?
Well, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a vital part of the infrastructure of the whole northwest of Ireland, Jimmy. I think it's a very necessary service that we have got there. It has caused us problems, there's no doubt about that, and the bill has been quite high over the years. And we've been getting assistance from different departments, both north and south of the border, so people are attending at the airport that were never there before. This year in particular, with Ryanair, the figures have gone up from 50,000 to 150,000 commuters going through the airport. You know, that's quite a number of people that are voting with their feet about the success of the airport. So I think the airport in a way is a success, but financially we've got a bit of a problem there, there's no doubt about that.
What's the current overspend at the minute?
Well, we would suppose it's running at something into the 1.5 or maybe 1.7 million. But this is because of the safety measures that were undertaken during last year, and that's that's a frightening figure.
But do you understand the resentment from Joe Bloggs in the street, who the rates go up every year, and without this airport overspend every year, the rates wouldn't be as high as they are?
Well, Derry City Council, I think Gerry will agree, have endeavoured every year to keep the rates sporting down to below inflation. We always kept it right down to 2 point or 3 point, whatever, over the years, in spite of all our difficulties. And it's not the only thing that's subsidised in the council area. The airport has been figured, of course, in every news media that you get because of the difficulties there. But it's not an easy problem. We've got an airport which we're proud of. It's just the problem of maybe the way the cost is a burden surely on ratepayers. But we've got assistance from different government departments over the years, and we're hoping for other assistance until the Assembly went out of business.
Gerry O'Hara, is your party saying that there's any deal of a cover-up going on here?
Well, first of all, let me echo Willie's sentiments. I think that a viable functioning regional airport is critical for the development of the city and the region and the economy of this region. So we have supported wholeheartedly the development of an airport. We've been critical about the amount of subsidy. We've been critical about the management. We've been critical about the accountability around the management. Our chairperson of the airport committee, Cathal Crumley, couldn't tell you. We got 3.5 million of grant aid from between the British government and the Dublin government, which was welcome. It helped the expansion. There is at this stage almost 1.9 of an overspend on a 3.5 million budget, which is disastrous in economic terms. There was a firm of consultants brought in to anticipate what it would cost, and they didn't anticipate an overshoot of almost 2 million on a 3.5 million project. We can't get an answer. No councillor could tell you right on an A4 sheet where the 1.9 million went, and if it was safety measures or car parking measures or staff costs. I couldn't tell you that it's 400,000 or whatever. So if our chairperson doesn't know the detail of where it went, then it's up for speculation. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's malpractice by any means, but what I'm saying is that if we are the custodians of the public purse and the spending in the airport, and if I can't tell you, and if our chairperson can't tell you, then he's resigning from the committee and he's causing a public crisis around this issue. And we're not finished yet. We want to know in black and white terms on an A4 page, where did the 1.9 go and who's responsible for it? Because if you did it in this job, or if you did it in your household economy, or if somebody did it in your business, then there would be a major crisis, and public money is as accountable as all the rest of the money.
But Cathal Crumley's resignation was a dramatic moment but also, I mean, the committee went on to meet, accepted the resignation and moved on. How does that resignation bring accountability any closer?
Well, let me put it in context. We started asking questions here as far back as October of last year. We put in a 17-point document to the City Council officers asking for points of clarification because the overspend was identified as far back as September. We asked for detail. We got a paper back from the council officers which didn't satisfy us. I put a motion to council in January of this year calling for the committee to be made more transparent, more accountable, for a council officer to be put in charge of it with direct responsibility. A whole range of measures which we thought would have been sensible and would have opened it up to public scrutiny. The motion was voted down by the SDLP and the DUP, and you know, one of the parts of the motion was that we would bring in a transport consultant, preferably from Europe, who would give us a strategy, because our view was that there isn't a clear strategy for the airport other than keep pumping money in until it floats. And there is an element of subsidy in developing a regional airport, but there's a point where public patience becomes stretched, and you have to actually show that the viability is starting to kick in. And I think it's overdue, and I think that it's a lack of strategy, a lack of vision, and a lack of tight management. Now, I'm saying that publicly, and in the airport committee we wanted to insist on that. Now, we're going to keep on insisting on it, and Cathal Crumley's resignation, he went back on the committee, and he's in the committee plugging and asking questions, but he's not going to be chair of a committee, which is a sham.
Right. Well, O'Connell, as a former chairman of the airport committee yourself, why did the SCLP join with the unions to vote down the Sinn Féin motion?
Well, we think that that particular night there was a bit of kite flying from the Sinn Féin. I think the thing that come to light about October last year, the overspend, that they were moving in that direction. It must have been about the time that Gerry's referring to, that they wrote the letter to the town clerk, or however. You know, we knew the direction we were going in then. We were taking certain measures to counteract that. You know, we can all run away from the problem, but that doesn't solve the problem. The man chairing the meeting, if he resigns from the committee or resigns from the chair, I mean, we can all do that if we want to do that. But people, as they face up the responsibilities that are there and try and work it out to the best advantage of everybody. And, you know, it's a short-term thing to say we're resigning from the chair because things aren't just as we wanted. That night that the motion was voted out was, I think Sinn Féin didn't get their way, so they huffed about it, and they went on different ways.
No councillor can explain 1.9 million of an overspend. Not one councillor of the 30 councillors. Let Willie explain it if he can. Let somebody put it on that table in black and white and say this is where the 1.9 million went. People of Derry deserve to know this. There shouldn't be any secrecy about it.
Why aren't we being told, Willie O'Connell, where the 1.9 million was used up?
There's nobody been disputing that. There's nobody disputing that. If it is that figure, I'm not quite sure. But at this moment in time, it's the subject of an investigation in council, and I think that Gerry's wrong mention all these particular things in public. I think it's subject, and he probably knows that himself. I think the way we're going about it was that we have a committee now set up that will meet monthly under whoever's chair, you know, and they will meet. All the officers in council, all senior officers will be present at that committee meeting. All reports will be made to that meeting, and everybody will know what's going on at the airport from every officer that knows that's in it. That'll be done. We're bringing in a team of consultants that'll look at the specialist consultants that will look at the way forward, looking at the financial setup, the infrastructure that's needed for the airport, all the future development of the airport, or whatever has to be done, new routes, whatever else. But that'll be done too.
Well, how can sorry to interrupt you, but how can an airport have a future when every year the overspend gets bigger, gets more and more? Well,
if Derry Airport hasn't got a future, what would the people of Derry say if we hadn't got an airport? If you hadn't got a port, a shipping port, and you hadn't got an airport, and you hadn't got a railway station, they're talking tonight of taking off the Derry line of the railways because they're losing money there and they need so many, 150 million to upgrade them. If we do that, Jimmy, we're sitting here in isolation in the northwest of Europe, not just of Ireland. We need these communications with different parts of the world. And airports vital to infrastructure. It has brought in a lot of people to the northwest and taken a lot of people out. And people, I've seen a survey in the paper just last week, and every single person on it agreed with the airport being there and what odds about the money. But we don't say what odds about the money. We're concerned about it, but we want the airport to work.
Gerry O'Hara, is it your belief that the man on the street's quite happy that this debt gets bigger every year?
Well, we get quite a lot of criticism about the airport, and let me correct you, there's an overspend every year. We're subsidising the airport to the tune of about £1 million a year, the ratepayers in the city, which, you know, you might say, well, is a necessary cost, or you might not. I wouldn't mind getting a public view on it. This 1.9 million overspend is on top of that again. So, like, this isn't, you know, this is extra money. Let me say again, we're committed to the development of an airport. I think a city our size and was intending to grow needs an airport, and I think we have to push for that. But there's crisis management, there's a lack of management, and there's a lack of accountability, and it needs to be. And Wally's talking about, you know, decisions that were made. Those are decisions that haven't been cleared through a council committee, and I don't know who's making all these decisions. The council, the 30 elected councillors, have to be the people who make these decisions, because we carry the can when this money doesn't get explained, and we take the public criticism, and come election time people are going to judge us. So I'm not going to be part of something where I can't explain where it's gone, I can't explain who took decisions, and I can't explain what went wrong. So either I'm going to know, or I'm going to be publicly saying I don't know, and somebody does know, and they better get it out there.
Could I say, Jimmy,
Yeah, sure.
in a way that at a meeting which was held before John Keeney retired as town clerk, or retired as town clerk, way back about 2 years ago, Cathal Crumley attended that meeting along with other party leaders in his office, showing us new structures for the airport, new management structures for the airport. We were thinking about the public-private type of thing, and our council and public, you know, together running the airport in the future. That was being progressed along the line. It was slow in its way, there's no doubt about that. We had meetings then with members of the Derry Chamber of Commerce and other people from the city, business people from the port, to discuss the future of the airport. Cathal Crumley was present at that, you know, and then we were caught in the middle of John Keeney's sickness when he had to retire from council. It was all been built up over that last year. All this has come since John went out. I suppose things have got a wee bit difficult. It has come to light in October that there was an overspend there. We have to come to grips with that overspend. We were promised from the Assembly £400,000 by Minister Robinson when he came to Derry, Peter Robinson, and it was being matched by the Southern Government, another £400,000. You know, helping towards the paying off of that overspend at the time. But the Assembly went out of business, so everything went up in the air that same as well. That's not a pun. But, you know, that's where it rested there. If the Assembly had still been there, Mary Harney, who was in the town a couple of Thursdays ago, was here just to make that very announcement, but the Assembly went out just a couple of days before it. So, you know, I can see surely great difficulty with ratepayers having a burden every year on themselves about the rates. But I still point to the point that they have made, that Derry's rates are quite low. The only rate that seems to add to that is the regional rate on top of it that makes it higher. But Derry keeps a very low rate and tries to keep low inflation in spite of the airport and in spite of our difficulties.
At that point, we're going to take a short break. In part 2, when you return, we'll be talking on the Bloody Sunday Enquiry. We'll be back in 2 minutes. And you're welcome back to part 2 of Studio 9, where my guests this week are two councillors, Gerry O'Hara of Sinn Féin and Willie O'Connell of the SDLP. Gentlemen, before the break, I said we'd talk about the Bloody Sunday Inquiry. And before we get into the detail of it, if I could ask both of you first, Willie, there again are two sections in this city, and one seems to be showing, at best, indifference towards the civil inquiry. Can you understand that?
I suppose that there are people who are opposed to the inquiry, certainly, and I hear different politicians on about it during the day. But I think the majority of people would welcome the inquiry to try and get to the truth of the matter. And it's been long awaited, over 28 years, you know. And I suppose it's good to see that the relatives of the people who were murdered that day, and even the people who are wounded, you know, have achieved something and get the inquiry. Now, if the inquiry comes out with some answers that satisfy I'm sure that's what we're all looking for, is the truth of the matter.
Gerry, can you understand this unionist indifference?
Well, I suppose in a way I can understand it because, the history of what happened after Bloody Sunday and the unrest that we had for all those years, but I think even they would have to acknowledge that the incidents on Bloody Sunday actually contributed to all of the years that followed, and contributed and magnified the effect that it was going to have, especially on a city like Derry. Now, that's in political terms and in a wider context, but I think they need to understand that people who saw their relatives gunned down on the street, who saw them unarmed, who know them to be innocent, and who were then vilified and had their relatives vilified, I think they're entitled to justice. And I think that, however irked they might be at the cost of this and the length of time it's going to take, I think that they would have to acknowledge that people who suffered that are entitled to justice, and everyone involved.
Most people, most political commentators would say that Bloody Sunday was the best recruitment drive they ever had. Would you agree with that?
I would say that it contributed, and it probably increased the level of recruitment and the level of activity that followed. But I think there was a process in train at that time, and that Bloody Sunday was actually just contributed fairly heavily to that. I think that what Bloody Sunday was meant to do was to drive people off the streets, and that's what it was about. And I think that it was an attempt to put protest off the streets and to put people back into their houses and their homes and into their ghettos. And in that sense, I think that the spirit, and while there might have been people who went and took direct action, I think the political effect in people's minds of a British government trying to drive Irish people off the streets with that level of brutality and disregard for justice and the rule of law, I think that's where the damage was done. And I think that's the enormity of the mistake that the British made.
Would it not be fair to say then, if Bloody Sunday had never been in history, that the IRA probably wouldn't be in existence now?
I don't think you could say that, but I think it contributed to, and not just in Derry, because this had an effect right across the north of Ireland and the south and the world. So I think what it did was it brought the conflict that was emerging in a very sort of unfocused way. It brought it into focus for people. It raised the stakes, and it identified the sides very clearly. And so I think that's what it did.
Well, O'Connell, there is still to be decided if soldiers are going to be demanded to arrive here in Derry to give evidence. Do you see anything wrong with them giving evidence in London, for example?
Well, I would think they should come here. I've said it before. I think it's not very nice to see what they call the elite regiment of the British Army hiding behind the coat or the apron strings of anonymity. I think they should be here to let the people know how they felt on that day. Were they really in agreement with what happened? Because some reports tell us they were. Other people say they regretted what happened. But it would be nice to see them here, giving their evidence surely in person. I would think that should be the way it would be done.
Gerry, it's not really reasonable to expect soldiers to have to run a gauntlet of hate, is it, to get into the Guildhall? Nor is it reasonable to expect maybe Ted Heath to be brought over.
Well, I think there's two levels of accountability that have to be done here. I was there on Bloody Sunday. I watched people getting killed. It's a horrific thing to watch. Trained British soldiers, arrogant, smiling, and cocky, killing people who were crawling for cover, killing people who had their hands up, and killing people who were running in the midst of a crowd. It's a horrific thing to witness in a civic society. So there's two levels of accountability. I think the soldiers who did that have to be made accountable, and I don't mind the fact that they have to come back to the city where they did it, and where they went and celebrated afterwards. I think they should be brought back and forced to face it. I think also that Ted Heath and the people who sat in the rooms in Westminster and in Stormont and in the Strand Road in Derry, and who took the decisions to teach the nationalists of Derry a lesson, I think they need to be brought to the account. And I think I wouldn't be at all reluctant to put them under the spotlight and ask them the hard questions, because there's state violence and there's state murder, and there's the people who do it and there's the people who plan it. And I hope that this inquiry is going to bring out all of that. So, not just the military aspect of this, the people who actually did the killing, I think that we need to look at the people who directed this politically, the people who lobbied for it politically, and the people who demanded it in this city and beyond. So I'm happy to see all that coming out.
Do you not think that the soldiers could give as comprehensive evidence from London with a video link to the Guildhall as they could in person?
No, I think that the MOD has done its best to sabotage this inquiry very blatantly, very arrogantly, and the fact that they disposed of weapons and tried to almost dispose of every weapon that was used, the fact that these soldiers, they tried to keep these soldiers out of the witness box. These soldiers are entitled to come here and be questioned and be asked about their actions, not from the comfort of a studio in London or somewhere like that there. Let them come back to the city where they did the killing, let them explain it, and let them face the people of this city.
Just presume, Gerry, stay with you for a second. Just presume that the 2 years or whatever down the line, Savile publishes a report and blame is attached to individual soldiers who are maybe even named. Are you looking for a punishment here, or is that enough for you?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that people haven't looked beyond getting the truth and getting justice. I think the question of whether, when that truth and justice comes out, whether the individuals responsible have to be brought to book personally, is an issue that I haven't thought deeply about, I have to say, and I don't know if the relatives are demanding that level of retribution. So I think the fact that we would get as far as getting the truth out, as far as getting an honest version of what happened, I think at that point people will think further. But I think the struggle to get this far has been so long and so distant that getting this far, people will have to stop and think. But I don't think there's anyone in Derry that's looking for revenge. I don't think there's bitterness in this. I think there's a sense of outrage and a sense of a need for justice. So I don't think it's revenge. On a political level, I would have to say that the number of British soldiers who have been convicted for killing Irish people is very small, and that's been part of the whole conflict, the immunity that the soldiers have had. But personally, I don't feel a need for revenge or bitterness about this. I would like to see the truth come out.
Well, are you more confident from your point of view, from a nationalist point of view, that Savile will produce conclusions that Widgery failed to?
I have a feeling, that this inquiry has been put up so well, it's been done so well. So what went before it, as Gerry has mentioned, it seems to be a bit fouling the pitch. Mm-hmm. The rifles issue, for instance, been missing, and different other things that about the soldiers, and statements from different army people in England about the whole setup here. But I have a feeling, that maybe Savile will get at the truth. I remember that day pretty well, as Gerry has pointed out himself. And that particular night we set up the Bloody Sunday Committee, which I was a member of. And it was brought to the attention of the world then about what had happened that day. I was quite surprised and shocked a couple of days after it when I worked in the newspaper. It was a handout from the British Press Office came to hand to the newspaper, which named everybody who was shot that day as bombers and gunmen. Everybody that was shot that day, bombers and gunmen. I was quite shocked at that. And afterwards, I remember I had that document with me when I met Lord Windlesham up at Stormont. And I showed him that document, and he just looked at it, read it, and handed it back to me. That was the way it was being treated. Like, nobody wanted to know anything about it. But I feel that, going back to the inquiry, I think while Widgery was a whitewash, I think maybe Savile will have more. The truth might come out here. How long it may take, I don't know. I hope it does at the end of the time. We've got to get the truth to lay this to rest. I mean, people have the relatives of fathers that are dead, brothers that are dead. All those people deserve this sort of justice that to be brought back. People are accountable who did it. I think it was planned from day one. I do really think it was planned for day one. I think when we went out on the beaches at McGilligan the previous Sunday, we seen the brutality there. Granted, it was clubs from the army that was there that particular day on the beach, and that was an anti-internment rally. The Sunday of Bloody Sunday was an anti-internment rally as well. We were against internment, and it was the civil rights movement, of course, who had organised it. But all that's in the memory now, and I think that day was one of the cataclysmic proportions it had that type of an effect on the people of this city and on the world. And I stood and I fell at the small barricade where young Nash and the other lads were shot. I fell there at that barricade and I saw the soldiers on their knees down the street from me, where I was born and reared in Roswell Street, on their knees firing the shots. Panic was there. People weren't standing facing soldiers. They were running away when they were shot. People were running, most of them. As I say, the accounts of people being shot on the ground. It's just frightening to think that anybody could do that. That's blatant murder. Blatant murder.
Gerry, is there not a danger that if it does take 2 or more years to complete, that by that time the world's attention will go within a week anyway, won't it? It'll be the local attention, maybe even the Irish attention that'll remain. Will the families will probably be there every day anyway, but I mean, they'll be the only ones anyway, won't they? If it does take 2 or more years to complete, that by that time the world's attention will go within a week anyway, won't it? It'll be the local attention, maybe even the Irish attention that'll remain. Will the families will probably be there every day anyway, but I mean, they'll be the only ones anyway, won't they? The public appetite for this will lessen.
Well, I think there'll be a novelty factor as you start off. This last few days has been that. There'll be a level of consistent interest, I believe, from families, lawyers, human rights organisations and concerned members of the Derry public, and it'll probably boil down to that hardcore of people. And I think that's okay. That's in the nature of it. What's going to happen is that the detail will come out. Some of the more sensational pieces of detail the journalists will pick up on, and it'll keep the story alive. But what we're really looking at is at the conclusion of all of this, we end up with a summary of the facts. And hopefully the summary of the facts will be the truth of the situation. I think the families deserve nothing less than, and the people who died deserve nothing less than total exoneration. We know, all of the people in Derry who were there know they were totally innocent. We need that to be said publicly. We need an apology, because Wally's right. Within hours of these people being killed, they were all being labelled as snipers on the top of the flats and nail bombers and machine gunners and all sorts of nonsense in the British press. The tabloid press, I think, has a lot to answer for. So the people were vilified. And I think you need to think of the families, because we weren't as experienced, we weren't as politically educated then as we are now. And a lot of those families took it to heart. A lot of those families were cowed and were vilified and were totally bullied by the British state and the keeping their heads down, and they've carried it. I think those families have carried trauma for all of these years. They're now able to come out and talk about this. They're now able to stand up and say our relatives were innocent and we demand the truth. So I think that at the end of it we're going to get the facts, we're going to get the truth, and those families, I think, will be vindicated, and the people who were killed and wounded will be vindicated.
Well, I'm sorry for interrupting there. We're just going to have to leave it at that point. Thanks very much, Willie and Gerry, for coming along tonight. That's it for another Studio 9. We'll be back at the same time next week, and your company will be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching.